Just one dinner, Alex, Mom had pleaded. Yeah, right. The words echoed in my head as I stepped into the restaurant, a familiar dread washing over me. I always knew my family didn't quite get me growing up. I was the quiet one, the bookish kid who didn't fit their loud, flashy lifestyle. While my cousins bragged about weekend blowouts and designer labels, I was the supposed geek burying myself in studies, working odd jobs and dreaming of an escape. Impressing them, especially my cocky, self-centered relatives, was the last thing on my mind. Life has a funny way of working out, though. All that hard work paid off. I grinded, built Summit Solutions from nothing, and ended up making more money than any of them could have imagined. Not that they acknowledged it, or maybe they just pretended not to notice. My success was invisible until they figured they could get something out of it, which led me here tonight. Seeing them wasn't on my agenda. Honestly, I'd spent years dodging these family dinners. They always followed the same script. Backhanded compliments, fake smiles, and jabs reminding me that no matter what I accomplished, I'd always just be Alex, the oddball. But my mother, Elena, bless her trying hard, had practically begged. Just this once, Alex, for my sake. It's been too long. Against my better judgment, I gave in. I knew it was a mistake the moment I walked into the Gilded Grill. Way too fancy, way too loud. The whole extended clan was already settled around a massive table, laughing it up like a scene from some bad sitcom. My cousin Kyle Miller, my chief tormentor back in the day, held court in the middle, a smug grin plastered on his face like he owned the joint. The instant he spotted me, that grin stretched wider. Well, well, look who finally graced us with his presence, Kyle drawled, leaning back dramatically, his voice loud enough for nearby tables to glance over. Didn't think you had time for the little people anymore? Big shot? I plastered on a polite smile and reached for an empty chair near the end. Kyle frowned theatrically. Sorry, Alex, that seat's actually spoken for. I scanned the table. The only open spots were right next to Kyle or his equally condescending sister, Sarah Miller. I moved toward another chair. Sarah rolled her eyes. That one's taken too. I stared. Are you serious? Kyle chuckled, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. Alex, this table is for family. Maybe you can grab a spot outside? Laughter rippled through the group. Not everyone, but enough to make my jaw clench. My mother looked pained but stayed silent. She always did. My Aunt Carol smirked. Uncle David just shook his head like I was some kind of walking punchline. And Kyle? Kyle looked utterly pleased with himself. I could have walked out. I probably should have. Instead, I managed a tight smile. Outside? Nah, I think I'll stick around. I grabbed an unused chair from an adjacent empty table and dragged it over, positioning it just slightly outside their immediate circle, but close enough to technically be part of the gathering. A waiter approached, looking confused, but I waved him off and just ordered a sparkling water. Kyle and Sarah exchanged a knowing glance, but didn't push it. Not yet. Then the main event began. I wasn't naive. I knew why they'd insisted I come. This wasn't about catching up, it was about showing off, funded by me. Throughout the meal, they made a spectacle of ordering the most expensive items. I'll have the Wagyu steak, Kyle announced loudly, snapping the menu shut, and the lobster tail. Oh, and let's get another round of that premium Cabernet for the table. He shot me a challenging look. We're celebrating tonight, right? Sarah grinned. Definitely. We should live it up. Desserts all around, Uncle David chimed in. Get the priciest ones. Servers kept bustling, plates piled up, glasses were refilled, and the bill climbed steadily higher. I said nothing. I just sipped my water, watching their performance with a detached sort of amusement. Finally, when the plates were cleared, the wine was gone, and everyone was leaning back, groaning contentedly, the waiter returned with the check. 4,185s. He placed it deliberately on the table, right in front of me. Kyle stretched languidly. You got this, right, Alex? Sarah giggled. Come on, what's this little amount to Mr. Summit Solutions? Silence descended. Every eye at the table was on me, waiting. I let the moment hang in the air. Then slowly, deliberately, I picked up the check, scanned it briefly as if the total actually mattered to me. I let out a soft chuckle, a low knowing sound. Kyle frowned. What's so funny? I leaned back slightly, took another sip of water, and met his gaze with a grin. Oh, I said smoothly. You guys seem confused about who's covering the tab tonight. And with that, I placed the check back on the table, directly in front of Kyle. Kyle stared down at the bill, blinking hard, like the numbers weren't computing. I settled back in my chair, perfectly relaxed, watching the ripple of confusion turn into a tidal wave washing over the table. Wait, are you kidding me? Kyle's voice lost some of its bluster, a nervous tremor creeping in. His confident smirk flickered for just a heartbeat. I didn't answer right away. I took another slow sip of water, observing his expression shift from bafflement to dawning realization, and then to something much darker. Sarah, sensing the shift, nudged Kyle lightly. Isn't Summit Solutions doing incredibly well, Alex? She asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, the sarcasm barely concealed. Surely a little dinner like this is pocket change for you. There it was. The entitlement. The blatant assumption that because I'd succeeded, I was obligated to bankroll their extravagance. They had zero appreciation for the years of sweat and sacrifice it took to build my business from scratch. All they saw was the result, the money they felt entitled to share. But this wasn't just about cash. No, this was about them thinking they could treat me like garbage, while simultaneously expecting to benefit from my hard work. Kyle tried again, forcing his voice to sound commanding, though his smile was now just a tight grimace. Come on, Alex, stop messing around. You know you can afford it. He glanced nervously at the hovering waiter, then back at me, as if offering one last chance for me to play the designated chump. Yeah, the bill's steep, but you're a successful entrepreneur, right? Just flash the plastic and let's wrap this up. My mother, Elena, who'd been quiet until now, shifted uncomfortably. Alex, honey, please don't make a scene. It's just dinner. It's a family night, and you know how they can be. Her voice faded, the usual attempt to smooth things over. But I sensed she wasn't fully aligned with them this time. Mom had always been the peacekeeper, terrified of conflict. But tonight I felt a hint of her own frustration simmering just below the surface. She knew I was being exploited, but lacked the nerve to intervene directly. I set my water glass down gently and surveyed the expectant faces around the table. My Uncle David, his considerable gut straining against his shirt, leaned forward, his tone turning gruff. Look, Alex, I don't know what game you're playing, but don't pretend we don't know your situation. You've been raking it in with that tech company for ages now. Stop being difficult. Pay the damn bill so we can all go home. He was practically ordering me, his tone cold and presumptuous. The others murmured agreement, some still smirking, others just waiting for me to crack under the pressure. It was obvious they assumed I'd cave, that I'd pay up just to avoid the confrontation. But I wasn't going to cave. Not tonight. Not after enduring years of their condescension, being the one they mocked or ignored unless they needed something. And it wasn't just that. No, there was a certain grim satisfaction in watching them squirm, completely clueless about what was coming next. I smiled slightly, not a big, boastful grin like Kyle's, but a small, almost mischievous curve of the lips. All right, I said, my voice steady and controlled. I'll take care of the bill. A collective sigh of relief went around the table. A couple of them even gave me awkward pats on the back, as if I'd just passed some kind of test. But I wasn't finished, not even close. Kyle's face brightened instantly. Sarm, see? Knew you'd come through. That wasn't so hard, was it? He offered a mock salute. Thanks, big shot. I leaned forward slightly, my smile fixed. Actually, no. I changed my mind. Good luck, everyone. The silence hit like a physical blow, instant and absolute. For a second, nobody moved or spoke. Kyle's expression shifted from smug relief to stunned disbelief, then anger. He opened his mouth to object, but I was already pushing my chair back and reaching for my jacket. I wasn't leaving the restaurant yet, but I wanted them to feel the pressure building. By the way, I added casually, my voice low but caring, if you don't want to be stuck footing a massive bill like this one, maybe think twice about how much you order next time. Kyle's eyes were wide now, stripped of their earlier arrogance. His jaw worked silently, and he glanced around the table, clearly flustered and unsure how to react. He'd expected me to be the same old pushover. Instead, I was rewriting the rules. I turned away from the table and started walking slowly toward the lounge area near the entrance, knowing they'd follow the predictable script I'd just laid out. The waiter stood nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable, waiting for someone, anyone, to take charge. And then I heard it. Hey, Kyle snapped. You can't just... But I didn't let him finish. I'll be over there, I called back, gesturing toward the cluster of plush armchairs in the lounge, just out of sight of the main dining room. Let me know when you've sorted it out. I walked away, feeling the thick tension prickle the air behind me. They had no idea how to handle this. They assumed they could push, guilt trip, and manipulate me, and I'd just fold like always. But this time, I refused to play their game. The arrogance, the entitlement, They were about to get a crash course in consequences they wouldn't forget. Sinking into a deep leather chair, I glanced back toward the dining area. Kyle was on his feet now, nervously tugging at his collar, conferring in urgent, hushed tones with Sarah and my mother. Their voices were too low to make out clearly from where I sat, but I caught fragments. Alex isn't going to... He has to pay, right? Don't make him angrier. We need him for the check. Do we have enough? The desperation was palpable. They were scrambling, trying to figure out who could contribute what, calculating how much they could possibly scrape together without actually dipping into their own wallets. They were about to discover that this time, their safety net, me, was gone. Minutes ticked by. I pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll through emails, acting utterly unconcerned, though every few seconds I'd subtly glance over to monitor their rising panic. The waiter hovered near their table, likely giving them pointed looks, waiting for a resolution. The longer this dragged on, the more apparent it became that they were completely out of their depth. It wasn't long before Kyle trudged over to me, his expression a mixture of simmering frustration and something approaching shame. I remained seated, deliberately taking my time before looking up at him. "What's up?" I asked, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. He blew out a sharp breath, visibly struggling to keep his composure. "Alex, this isn't funny anymore. The bill is way more than anyone expected. Can you just help us out this once? Come on, we're family, aren't we?" A small, dry chuckle escaped me before I could stop it. "Oh, I'm not laughing, Kyle. I'm dead serious. You guys wanted the big fancy meal. You ordered anything and everything without a second thought, assuming I'd cover it. And now you want me to foot the bill? For the multiple bottles of expensive wine? For everything?" He hesitated, swallowing hard. "Look, man, we didn't realize it would add up like this. I mean, it's just dinner, right? Can't you just, pitch in?" I leaned back further into the chair, letting his weak excuse hang in the air. This was the same pathetic routine they always pulled. Zero self-awareness, zero accountability. They didn't give a damn about me. They only cared about my perceived wealth. "Kyle, I'm done playing this game," I said finally, my voice firm. You're all adults. You can afford your own meals. I'm not your financial safety net anymore. I don't care if you're my family. That relationship doesn't entitle you to my bank account." His expression hardened from desperation to defensiveness, his eyes narrowing. "So you're just going to leave us holding the bag? After everything we've done for you? All the times we've been there for you?" I leveled a flat stare at him. "What exactly do you mean, been there for me? You mean all the times you've hit me up for money while making me feel obligated? That doesn't count as support, Kyle." Behind him, Sarah and Elena were watching intently, their anxiety mounting with every passing second. They knew this wasn't going according to their plan. I could practically see the gears turning in Sarah's head as she tried to scheme a new angle. My mom, however, just looked more panicked than I'd ever seen her. "Well, we can't just skip out on the bill, can we?" Sarah's voice was tight, cracking slightly under the stress. "I mean, we're not going to just walk out on a bill over $4,000. That's insane," I raised an eyebrow pointedly. "Nobody's walking away, Sarah. You guys are staying and paying. I'm done with the charade. I don't care about the family connection in this context. You've been taking advantage of me for years, and it stops now." Kyle's face was turning a blotchy red, frustration boiling over. You can't be serious. You're really going to let us twist in the wind here? We're stuck with this massive check, Alex. And I'm stuck with the bill? You think I made these choices?" I interrupted, cutting him off sharply. "You all decided what you wanted. You ran up the tab. Now deal with the consequences." Sarah opened her mouth to retort, but my mother cut her off, her voice trembling. "Alex, please. This isn't the time or place. We're family, remember? Just help us out. You can afford it." Her words landed like stones. They knew I could afford it. That was the crux of it. They knew about Summit Solutions, about my success. But they never viewed that success as something I'd earned through relentless work. To them, it was just a resource pool for them to tap into whenever they felt like it. I slowly stood up, straightening my jacket. "No, Mom. I can't afford it. Not this time. But you can. Kyle can. Sarah can. Uncle David can. I'm not cleaning up your mess tonight." I turned toward the waiter who had been hovering discreetly nearby, undoubtedly aware of the unfolding drama. I caught his eye and gave a small, decisive nod, signaling that my involvement was over. And just like that, I walked toward the exit, not looking back. I heard the confused, angry murmurs erupt behind me as I stepped out of the lounge and into the cool Denver night air. I didn't glance back. The sound of hurried footsteps following me made my pace falter for a second, but I wasn't turning around. They dug this hole themselves. Now it was time to see if they could climb out. It wasn't long before I reached the parking lot, my hands shoved deep in my pockets as I stood contemplating my car. I heard the distinct clack of heels on asphalt approaching rapidly, and then Sarah's voice, sharp with panic, calling my name. Alex. Wait, I didn't answer, didn't turn. My pulse was steady. I felt strangely calm, but I could hear the raw desperation in her voice, the attempt to drag me back into their vortex of drama. I wasn't playing anymore. Alex, she called again, her voice wavering. You can't just leave us like this. Please. This is serious. I spun around then, cutting her off abruptly. You think I don't know what's serious, Sarah? You think I haven't seen this exact move coming for years? She stopped short, momentarily speechless. The wind sighed through the nearby aspens, amplifying the tension hanging between us. She scrambled for words, but I wasn't giving her the chance. Not this time. You've been using me for years, I said, my voice low but unwavering. Every single time there's an expense, it's always, Alex, you can cover this, right? It's never, hey, Alex, how are things? It's always been about what I could provide for you. Well, tonight the bank is closed. Her eyes flickered, a flash of guilt quickly masked by defensive anger. You can't just abandon us like this, she snapped, her voice rising. We need you. You don't just walk away from family when they're in trouble. My jaw tightened, but I kept my composure. I'm not walking away from family, Sarah. I'm walking away from your toxic entitlement. This isn't family behavior. This is manipulation, plain and simple, and I'm done enabling it. She stood there, face flushed, momentarily stumped. But before she could rally, I saw Kyle and my mom hurrying out of the restaurant, both looking utterly frantic. Kyle's shirt was askew, and he looked genuinely panicked. My mom's expression was a wreck of guilt and fear, her eyes wide as she saw me standing there, still just out of reach. Alex, please. We don't know what to do, my mom pleaded, her voice cracking. We can't afford this bill. You're the only one who can possibly help us right now. Her words struck me, but not with pity. Instead, I felt a cold, almost detached sense of vindication, watching their carefully constructed evening unravel. They had pushed me too far, too many times, and now they were facing the reality that actions have consequences. You really think I'm just going to swoop in and rescue you again, huh? I asked, my voice quieter now. You think this is only about money? It's not. This is about basic respect. This is about acknowledging the fact that I worked my ass off to get where I am, and you don't get to just leech off that success whenever it's convenient for you. Kyle took a step closer, hands slightly raised in a pleading gesture. Alex, come on, man. Don't do this to us. We're family. You have to understand. This isn't just about the money, it's about… No, Kyle! I cut him off, my tone hardening. For you, it has always been about the money. The second you thought I had enough to cover your asses, you stopped seeing me as a person. I just became your personal ATM. I watched Kyle's face flush crimson as he struggled for a response, his mouth opening and closing uselessly. It was clear he couldn't fathom this was really happening, that I wasn't just going to fold under pressure like always. I glanced at my mom. She looked increasingly desperate, her eyes darting between me and the restaurant entrance, probably praying I'd relent and fix everything. But I wouldn't. Not this time. You made your 5-star bed. Now you get to lie in it, I said curtly, turning away. I'm done here. Before they could launch another round of protests, I unlocked my car and slid into the driver's seat. I started the engine, its low rumble filling the tense silence. In my rearview mirror, I saw their figures, still standing there, seemingly frozen in disbelief. I refused to feel guilty. They had countless chances to treat me differently. They chose not to. As I pulled out of the parking lot, a profound sense of liberation washed over me. For once, I wasn't the designated sucker. I wasn't the one being taken for a ride. As the gilded grille faded behind me, I knew deep down I'd made the right call. They had pushed me past my limit. Now it was time for them to learn their lesson. I hadn't driven more than a few blocks when my phone buzzed. I knew instantly who it was. I didn't even glance at the screen. Let them call. Let them text. I wasn't engaging anymore. But naturally, they didn't give up easily. They never just let things go. By the time I got back to my apartment in Denver, my phone showed 7 missed calls from my mom, 5 from Kyle, and a new text from Sarah. Alex, really sorry PLS come back. We can pay you back PLS. Don't leave us like this. I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but ultimately, I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. They had completely misjudged the situation and me. I tossed my phone onto the couch and pulled a local craft beer from the fridge. The quiet in my apartment was a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. The faint hum of city traffic outside, the soft whir of the refrigerator. That was it. Silence was incredibly soothing. But as the minutes stretched, I felt an odd blend of satisfaction and something else. Maybe relief? It truly wasn't about the money anymore. It was about finally asserting myself, something I'd never effectively done with them before. Just then, my phone buzzed again on the couch cushion. I glanced over. Another text from Sarah. This one was shorter, more desperate. Can't cover the check, it's over $4,100, pulls help. That was all. I read the message, then read it again. It felt surreal. Over $4,100. The amount they'd so casually expected me to handle earlier, as if it were nothing. I recalled their entitled smirks, their assumption that I'd just pick up their extravagant tab without question. I didn't feel a shred of pity. Not one bit. I settled back on the couch, popped the top on my beer, and watched the phone screen, anticipating the inevitable follow-up calls. It happened like clockwork. Less than 10 minutes later, the phone rang, displaying Kyle's name. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Alec," he began immediately, his voice tight with contained frustration. "Look, we get it, okay? You're pissed, but we seriously need your help here. We cannot cover this. You have to help us out." I could hear the underlying panic, the desperation barely masked. It almost made me smirk, but I kept my voice level. "Kyle, I already told you," I said evenly. "You need to figure this out on your own. You guys dug this hole. It's not my responsibility to pull you out." "But Alex, you don't understand. This is family," Kyle snapped, the words tumbling out in a rush. "You're really just going to leave us here to deal with this alone? After everything we've been through?" "Everything we've been through," I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You mean the decades of you guys treating me like a walking wallet? The constant requests for loans and favors that always felt more like demands? Is that what you mean by everything?" There was a charged pause on the other end, followed by a long, weary sigh. "I didn't mean it like that, Alex. Please, we're not trying to use you. We genuinely need help right now." "Help?" I countered. "What I've been giving you for years wasn't help, Kyle. It was enabling. And guess what? You'll figure this out. You're resourceful adults. If I keep bailing you out every time you overspend, you'll never learn financial responsibility." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken resentment. He didn't argue further. I knew he understood my point, even if admitting it was impossible for him. "Good luck, Kyle," I said, my tone hardening slightly. "You're going to need it." I ended the call before he could utter another word. The rest of the evening passed peacefully. I enjoyed my beer, put on some random show on a streaming service, and let the situation play out remotely. As expected, one final text message arrived from my mom. "Alex, if we are still angry, we'll make it right. Just pals come back, pay the bill." I didn't reply. They were truly on their own this time. The next day, through the grapevine, which in my family travels faster than light, I learned that they hadn't been able to cover the entire bill. Embarrassing calls had been made to their own friends for contributions. I heard they even had to arrange some kind of short-term loan to cover the difference. The cherry on top? Apparently, the manager at the Gilded Grill had given them a stern lecture about attempting to dine and dash by proxy, calling out their blatant attempt to use family pressure to cover irresponsible spending. They were by all accounts thoroughly humiliated. And me? I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. In the end, the real victory wasn't about the money saved or the petty satisfaction of watching them squirm. It was the profound relief of finally taking control. I had drawn a clear boundary, and upholding my self-respect was worth far more than any overpriced steak dinner. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. I'd learned the hard way that sometimes the most supportive thing you can do for family is to let them stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means watching them stumble and fall first. I'd done my part for years. Now it was their turn to figure things out.